Hi there, worship leaders. Pastor Andrew here. I just wanted to make a little video, not because I love seeing my face on the screen, but I just wanted to get you guys percolating on some ideas for the new year, like from September probably through to next June. And so I wanted to sort of outline some vision stuff, give you guys a chance to think it through, and then we'd probably meet together as a group and discuss some stuff. But I think it'd be more efficient if I can just make this short video and you guys watch it and start thinking about it at home. I've already put the ball in motion with some of you guys, either talking about the plan for the next year or even with handing out the list of the sheet of the songs that we sing at each Sunday, and I'll explain that a little later on in the video. I'm not going for a high quality video or thinking through every word, so just any mistakes I make while I'm recording, don't worry too much about it. Anyway, just want to thank you guys for how you serve. I want to thank you guys for your vision for the ministry, and just even for the sacrifice that you guys, how you guys serve with sacrifice and serve with commitment, and just to thank you for that. You make my job a lot easier. I'm just so blessed with the team, and I really appreciate that. And make sure for those who are married or even for your families, just pass on the thanks to your spouses. I'm aware that to be a worship leader here at Emmanuel affects your family as well. So thank them, and just make sure that they know that we appreciate their sacrifice. Anyway, just a couple of things that we've been moving towards. One of the things that we've been wanting to do here is to move to a more limited song list. So this last year, there's been about 82 songs. Forgetting the Christmas carols, which we'll put to one side, there's been about 82, maybe up to 90 different songs in the database. Some of those were from youth, so we didn't sing a full 90. But what that meant was that in any given Sunday, the musicians had to be ready to play any of those 90 songs. Obviously, you picked your songs and they knew which ones to practice. But out of that, here's some of the things that I've noticed, and it's also what would be happening in a lot of churches now. It would be where they would run at a reduced set list, and so that's what we want to look at doing here. And so it would probably be a set list of about 40 songs on the database that we could choose from as you choose your songs from week to week. And the reason being, well, first of all, before I go to the reason being, just so we know, we're not eliminating songs because of, say, bad theology or because we just don't want to sing it anymore. We might have a song that we love the theology of, that we love to sing, but it's just time to take a break. And so this is not a list that is set in stone. If we were to keep this list of 40 for a complete year, at the end of that year, we would reevaluate and then add some in. And then just one other little disclaimer. Each church that I've sort of researched and looked into that operates with this limited set list, each church would have a certain time period. Some it's like every 4 months they change out some songs. They maybe take out 5 and put in 5 new ones. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 6 months. Honestly, I'm not sure the timeline for Emmanuel, and that one we'll have to play by year. But if we happen to leave your favorite song off the list, it might very well go back in the next 6 months. So what are the benefits? Well, again, just some things that I think you'll have observed and I'll have observed. I don't know if you've ever been to a practice where people have showed up and said, oh, I don't really know the songs, or I don't know 2 of the songs that we're singing this week. And that's not great, especially when we were doing the co-leading thing, and we're moving back to that, when a co-leader, and I get it's difficult to keep a handle on all the songs, but when a co-leader would show up and say, ooh, I didn't really know the songs, there's only going to be so good that team will ever be able to lead us in that song. And so I don't know if you've had that experience. I've certainly seen it at Emmanuel, where people would show up and not know the songs and yet be part of the worship team. Or I don't know if you've had it where I've seen a musician frustrated because they have practiced a certain lick or a certain fill, and then a worship leader has shown up and said, actually, I'm not going to do it that way. And then I have had to deal with maybe a little bit of frustration of knowing that say, electric guitar player had practiced a certain little fill or lick all week long, and then to find out all along the worship leader was never going to use it. And so these are some of the the evidences of just a team that is not super well prepared. And so one of the reasons why we want to go for a limited set list is just to be better prepared, and sort of to build up that familiarity with the teams, with the songs. The other reason for it would be the transitions. And I think we recognize the value of a good transition. And it's not just about being smooth or professional. I think that's sort of a byproduct, but it's really about not being a distraction to the worship environment that we've set. And you've been there, you've led the congregation in a song, they're engaging in worship, comes to the end of the song, and then there's that pause. The worship team is flipping over their papers. Maybe the guitarist is sliding up their capo, and there's that pause. And it's not long in terms of seconds, but it feels like an eternity, and it just sucks the energy out of that worship time. And so we want to do better at transitions. And again, with this limited set list, song list, it's going to help us to do better at transitions. And so there's two things for next year that I really want to work hard on and trying to get to. And that's one, this limited set list, and then two, that we would have set teams. And so that's something I'm going to be trying really hard to accomplish. And again, I also, as part of that, we want to raise the expectation. If you think about it, if I'm an electric guitar player and I know, say, out of the next year, my team is only going to do possibly 20 different songs, that's a lot more doable that I would learn the electric guitar part for each of those songs rather than having 80 songs, which is what we have now. And so I think by limiting the song list, we're going to raise the expectation, or we can raise the expectation that the guitar player has to learn that part, or that the bass player must learn that part. And now this is with the understanding that we're volunteer musicians, and sometimes you have just a busy week with family or work, or and there's other things as well, like just that the same sequence would be there throughout each time we lead that song. We'll talk about a bit more about that later on, but we want to raise that expectation, just that people would be learning parts, and that worship leaders would do the song the same way each time and be consistent, and that would be helpful with that. And that will also then lead to smoother transitions. And people notice, I think, in terms of the feedback that I get from the congregation, they love it. They appreciate all the worship leaders, but they certainly compliment whenever the worship time is smoother, when there's just those transitions that just seem more natural, when there's, even if a scripture is read and the team keeps playing, they appreciate that. And so this is all part of that package that we want to work to. And so I'd given out the list of songs, about 82 songs. Now, I think I explained to you that was up to, I think, about the end of February. So we've added some new ones, like Behold the Lamb, the one we've been doing the last month or so, is not on the list. Or it just so happens Jesus is Better is not on that list. And so those ones, just write them in your list. But basically what we want to do is we want to bring the 82 songs down to 30 songs. And so that's why I give you the list. If I haven't given you the list, you'll be getting it real soon. And I want you to go through that list and bring it down to 30, and then I'm going to sort of compile all the lists together and come up with the 30 songs that will be part of the database. And so that's what I want you guys to work on. So think that through. I've already got some back. Thank you for that. In particular, I want you to think about each category that that is on that list. I want to keep some from every single category, because those are the people. I think they reflect the people and the sort of the groups within our congregation. For example, the hymns. I sent out that email a while ago. We need to keep the older traditional hymns in the mix. And one category that's not necessarily a group or like a modern song, but certainly I know it just lands well when the leader starts with more of a high energy song rather than one of our slower, more introspective songs. And so I just encourage you to keep that in mind. And even for the younger people, before the kids go down to Sunday school, and you know, Jamie, I know he won't want me mentioning his name, but he's the master of this, the sort of higher energy, whether it's This Little Light of Mine, or My Lighthouse, or back in the day when we did Days of Elijah. I don't really want to do it. It's been done enough in my mind. But anyway, those kind of songs, that higher energy song. So keep a few songs like that in your list so that you can start with those, and that faster tempo I know for sure the kids and also generally in the congregation people enjoy those. So out of those 82 songs, get down to about 30 songs, and that way we'd be able to, so throughout the course of the year, we'll add to the 30 songs probably about 10 more. So I guess over the course of the year, I want the database to go up to about 40 songs. And so that would be what we'd be choosing from for this next year. So in terms of the teams, and we're going to be co-leading for the next year. I think I've spoke to most of you about who you're co-leading with. And the reason being, I want there to be, well, whenever I break it down and, how many bass players and how many electric players and so on, we get to about 5 teams with us co-leading. There's about 5 different worship teams. And I think that's good. I don't want you guys up there too infrequently. I think if it was every other month, that would be probably too little. I need you guys, I think, to keep your hand in the trade, as it were. I need you guys up on stage about every 5 weeks or so. And it just helps you to get familiar and just keep in the groove. And so we're going to be doing the co-leading thing. As part of that there, we're going to have set teams, as I mentioned, and really just to build the chemistry. So out of those 40 songs, so the 30 existing songs, probably plus 10 new songs that we'll add throughout the course of the year. So out of that 40 list of 40, your team would probably really hone in on probably 20, it might even be 15 to 20 out of that list of 40. And the reason being, like, there's going to be some on that list of 40 that you're not going to gravitate towards leading or feel that comfortable leading them. It's just maybe not quite your style. And so probably out of that list of 40, between the 2 co-leaders, they would have a list of 15 to 20 songs. And that would be the 15 to 20 songs that team, your team, would do for the year. And so you get really dialed in with those 15 to 20 songs. So for example, it would be the same key all year long. Your team would know if Daniel picks Behold the Lamb, it's always going to be, say, in the key of B. And his team would know that. And then the electric player knows he's always doing the licks in the key of B. And so there's just going to be that consistency that's going to help the musicians to perform better and just to be able to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And so if you can be thinking about that, so first of all, the first task is to look through, bring the song list down to about 30 songs. And then once I compile those 30 songs, then start thinking through what your 15 or 20 would be, aware that throughout the course of the year, we're going to add probably about another 8 to 10 new songs that we'll do throughout the year. And then you would add those to your list. And so you'd get really dialed in. Just give me a second here to find, yeah. So one thing would be, so I know this might not work super well in the video, so forgive me if it doesn't quite work. But you can see here, so this is the music sheets for Jesus is Better. But I did it a little different. I typed it up myself and then added this margin. And so you can see on this side, there are the notes. And so you can see there, I put just a few. Now this is just a few basic notes. So if you imagine your team would have a binder of 15 songs, 20 songs, and they would have the notes to transition, the way you guys transition, say, between verse 1 and 2, or an instrumental at a certain period. And the sequence is really important. So then we'd be able to do the same sequence every time. You can see it there at the top. Oh, wow, this is going to be a bit shaky. Right? And so you'd be sticking to the same sequence. Now, what are you giving up? You're giving up a little bit of the freedom. And this is, once your team gets familiar with the song, there's going to be that freedom that as a worship leader, if you felt you needed to repeat a chorus, you could do that. But to get the team dialed in on the transitions in particular between the instrumentals to a bridge, or it would be written on there in the notes that you're going to do the bridge 3 times. And so if you sing a certain song, say 4 times in a year, your team would know you're always going to do the bridge 3 times. And it's just going to help with the dynamics. I'm sure you've been there with the frustration of a drummer who didn't quite build up enough for that last time through the bridge. Whereas this time it's clear. It's going to take away a bunch of the extra coaching that sometimes goes on at practice. I know I've seen that, especially with some of our drummers. I've seen where maybe they weren't quite prepared, or even were, as a worship leader, maybe your expectations were changing in terms of the song. And so it's just a way where we can just have some consistency where you're not having to start with a blank slate every worship practice and be able to do that and start that song, but rather with each time you're building up, and probably on a sheet like this, you would have more notes that would be built up from time to time, each time that you do that song. And so it's going to build up to more chemistry. And here's the goal. Again, the primary goal is not about smoothness or being professional. The primary goal is that we're not a distraction for worship, and that we can recognize the role in terms of us facilitating worship, so that whenever you transition from song number 1 to song number 2, there's not that break in between where the congregation has sort of zoned out from worship and they're focusing on the fact that we're adding a capo, or that the whole worship team is flipping over their binder. Now, those things have to happen, but because we are better prepared, and because we know what the musicians are going to be more familiar with the songs and the licks and the introductions, then it's just going to be smoother. It's just going to be more manageable. And I think it's going to be less of a distraction, so that the congregation can stay engaged in worship. And I think that's going to be a big benefit. The other thing, just to say lastly on this, is there is definitely an appetite. I have seen amongst the musicians where several of them have came to me and said, I would love if we could have more practices, not per week, but like as if I was on one team and that team could get really dialed in, say meet for a Saturday afternoon, get dialed in on a number of songs. And so this is going to also add into that, where you maybe would have one practice, like a Saturday practice, sort of dial in, say 5 songs, and then implement those 5 songs into your worship schedule, and then maybe meet again in a couple of months and really dial in another 5 songs. And so again, each time your team is leading, now you've got a database of 10 songs that you're super dialed in with, and that you know what you're doing. And so just start thinking about this here and be praying about it. In particular, some other things that we're working on, and I'm not sure how quick the pace will be on this, but we're still working on better speakers. We're still working on some of the stage stuff. It would be nice. Some of the lighting is not great on the stage, so we need to improve on that. There's also a lot of cables, and a lot of you guys are pretty tied down, and especially for the backing vocalists, it'd be really nice to get a few wireless mics, and have them have the freedom, not necessarily to move around, but in the freedom to be at the front, and then to be able to walk to the side and put their mic down, and then there not to be mics and cables in front of where Pastor Don is preaching from. So those are also other projects that we're working on. Anyway, this is just a little bit of vision. If you can try to work through the song list, and then get it back to me, then we'll finalize the 30 songs, get thinking about 15 to 20 that you would want to do as a team. And I'll also try and communicate, make sure each of you know your co-leader. And I would encourage you to get together just to think through some songs. Even as co-leaders, I think it's going to be helpful to have a song list, and to just have a better idea where the songs the other person is likely to choose. I know with co-leading sometimes it can be a little awkward, but I think the more we do it, then I think the smoother and the more cohesiveness each of the co-leading teams will have. Plus, it also gives us the benefit that if one of the co-leaders is sick, then I'm not having to jump in as much and fill those spots. I think it's much better if then it's not such a big deal for you to lead all 6 songs, or even with work commitments, if somebody has to miss, then it's also an advantage as well. So anyway, that's all for now. God bless again, and thanks for all that you do for us.